What's good, everybody? What's going on, man? It's Stephen Qualls II, aka Mr. Qualified. It's your boy, and we're back with another episode of the Wright Quality Podcast. Friends, co-hosts, introduce yourselves.
Ashley Wright, the first, per usual, first installment, one and only.
Indeed.
Loser of the Latin League. I don't know if that element came up right.
It was flipped.
More. Add it too. I'm just gonna put up both. Well, what do they do?
Gil, go ahead with the update, man.
Well, I guess we'll start there.
Go ahead with the update, man.
For those that follow on Instagram, I've already talked. I've talked enough. I was barking this week. I was yelling. So first of all, let me just give you all a synopsis. There were no refs. It was the commissioner and a clipboard. And some kids that would not get off the baseline. Where I'm like, let me give you a synopsis. In the midpoint of this game, I'm like, get them off the court. They're going to get hurt. And the trash talk was so heavy at this time that one of the dudes in the other team was like, bro, I'll beat the fuck out of you. And I'm like, bro, I'm talking about the kids. And he just gave me one of these. He was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, bro, like, because mind you, in the midst of this game, I am talking with every single person that is on this other team because for some reason they're talking to me like I'm not torching every single one of them that's walking up this court. Granted, we lose, so I can't really say I'm torching everybody, but I got people that scored 2 points talking to me. So, a Latin League W must come. I can't talk about stats if we lose. So, yeah, that was that type of game. We were essentially calling fouls. It was bad. And, and then the game is half stiff arms, and we're not getting it called. I could go on, but I have to be better. What's 30 points if it's in a loss? It doesn't matter. I could bark all I want. I'm Pat Bev.
This is such an interesting league. It really needs to be documented.
Next one filmed. Ari canceled her dances, so she might be able to come to one.
Ashley, I'm convinced that this league is Bishop Sycamore. That is,
for Latins.
For Latins.
Hey, Jean Papi, you're included to the team. He is Dominican for the next 6 weeks. We picked up another one. Barry hasn't been there. We drafted him. We picked him up. Dominican Barry ain't show up yet. So substitute Dominican Jan coming to the club.
That's terrible. Talking about Dominican John. That is.
I'll ask him which one. He could be Ecuadorian John. We don't know. I'll ask.
Ecuadorian.
All right.
We will let him co-sign. Let me know, John. It probably Dominican. Wait, what's? Yeah. We'll discuss.
Off the rails really early today. I see. Gail.
You asked. I was gonna finish with Latin League, but I mean, the update was inquiry. So
fair, valid. Okay. All right. Well, let's just jump into the docket, friends. We are a month away from the 2024 NBA playoffs. I mean, so much can happen in the next month, but given what has happened up to this point, given how teams are looking, how are we feeling about teams who are contenders, teams who are kind of on the fringe, and teams that just don't look like they'll have enough to make it interesting come playoff time? Which teams fall in which categories for y'all?
It's so weird because, like, when we talk about this topic, we always say, "Oh, it's too early to tell." And it still feels like that, and we're a month away from the playoffs. Like, why does it feel like it's still too early to tell? I think it's anybody's championship. I feel like this might be the most unpredictable season so far, like as of late, because I can't really quite put my finger on who's coming out of which star we're going to see rise in the playoffs. It's just all up in the air still. So that's where I am at this point.
That's a great point.
I was going to say, I think kind of touched on it early, where it's like, is it the changing of the guard? Like we brought that up in early pods, where it's like, is it going to be the old era or the new era that comes out with it? And LA was looking like world beaters at the play-in, and now we are here. And whose is it? Like, I think the parity in the league is so even. Stars are becoming so dominant in their own right that there is no real telling on who's going to come out from where, because it's really matchups. I mean, depending on each playoff series, it's a toss up. You get Boston versus Miami in the East, how it is currently. You know, we saw how that went last time. I mean, and even so, like the Heat are 1.5 games out from where the Sixers are. You get Bucks versus Heat. I mean, Bucks versus Sixers where it's at. Embiid comes back healthy. What does that series look like? So, you know, and then you go to the Western Conference. Don't even start. Like you can flip a coin. Flip a coin because it's okay. Does Jokic get matched up against the Kings, where it's going to be a little bit more fast pace? Maybe, not to say that this is Jokic of old, where it's like he can get ran off the court, but maybe that favors the Kings in that series a little bit more than anyone else. Outside of facing, the Lakers or the Mavericks. I don't know. You can name any one of those teams and it can go either way. So, like Ashley said, too early to tell. I couldn't put a pulse on it either way, because now there's play-ins too. So it's like the 10 seed might come in. Like, hell, Atlanta might come through, and Trae Young is just like, I'm cold again, and runs through a 1-2 seed somehow. I have no clue. Too early to tell.
I personally don't think Ice Trae is cooling anything off anytime soon.
I understand. No, he is injured. Well, I'm just saying, throwing things out into the void, trying, throw.
I mean, anything can happen.
Just how uncertain I am, because the Heat blew us out last year. So, granted, they got 2 games of Giannis not playing. It's the NBA playoffs. It's who's healthy, who's trending the right direction in April. Teams don't have certain guys back. Give me those last 2 weeks when it's looking a little bit more clear, and I can tell you, okay, this is what I think is coming out of it.
So to both of your points, but to Ashley's original point, I do think it's strange that we're in the middle of March. We're a month away from the playoffs, and it's still kind of like, well, I don't know where some of these teams may end up, or I don't know what these matchups are going to look like, or I don't know who's gonna be ready. There's so many teams like not at full strength, missing a star, or a star gonna be coming back with like 2 weeks left in the season. So yes, you're looking at health, but then also like how many of these teams genuinely have chemistry and rhythm? Like how many teams have genuinely had enough time with their core healthy during the season to gel and be prepared for adjustments? Because that's why I think chemistry is so key. It's not like ball is ball. So knowing how to play is one thing, but team chemistry, when you have to adjust game by game and series by series, that's why I think the chemistry part is so crucial, especially for championship contenders. But I mean, I think to speak to the point that you made, Ashley, it's like Denver never looked bad this year, but they didn't start looking like themselves until after the All-Star break. The Denver we saw in the playoffs last year. But that kind of makes sense for a team that has gotten over that hump and kind of knows what it's like to go through a full season and then make the playoff push. So they're not lax, but I guess they may be a little bit better at pacing themselves. That's why I kind of get scared for teams like OKC and Minnesota. Not that they haven't paced themselves, but you put so much energy subconsciously into having this really good regular season that the humps and the hills of the playoffs, they get gassed, just with all the adjustments that have to be made game by game and series by series. So it's interesting because then even like a team like the Lakers, yeah, they're 9-10 in the seeding right now, but I mean, at full health and with some chemistry, I don't want to see them in the first round or the second round, really.
Do y'all think it's fair to call teams like the Thunder and the Wolves, I guess, inexperienced if they've had that play-in experience? Because play-in basketball, sometimes it seems like it's a little more intense than playoff basketball, because you're vying for the right and for that position. So Shea has been in that play-in position before, and so has the Wolves. And so, with that type of experience going into a successful season that they're in now, how scared should they be of a Denver or of a Phoenix?
I think teams like the Thunder and Wolves shouldn't be as afraid just because, you talk about experience, you have international experience too. Like Shea was balling out on the world stage
Mhm.
this offseason. Like Ant was the only one that showed up for Team USA. So it's like in moments where it mattered, I feel like, we've seen the mettle of these guys and how they perform. So I think it's interesting that you say that because you need to take all of that into account. Just like how are they going to look when it matters? Cat,
Mhm.
I think on certain teams, it's like who is the question? Who's the piece that really needs to prove themselves? Like for the Clippers, all of their team besides Kawhi. For Minnesota, it's Cat, I would say, and Gobert really hasn't had a successful postseason run being in Utah. You go to the East. I mean, Embiid hasn't made it to an Eastern Conference Final. Am I not, mistaken? I mean, everyone has their questions. Like, so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that necessarily, but I think I was just touching on what Ashley was saying. It's just like, wait, what is going to happen in these playoffs? I have zero clue. Yeah, do we want to see Lakers in the first round, even though they're old?
So
No.
that's a great point. And I don't think that the teams should be scared. I think that with the experience that they do have, I think they will be as best prepared as they can be for the playoffs. But I do think, while I agree that playing games are a little bit more intense because it's a one and done situation, um, I think about the mentality of a playoff series. So I think about it's not so much that they're scared of their opponent, but it's those things we haven't seen. Gail, you mentioned it last episode. We don't have the data. I haven't seen Shea respond down 2-1 on a road game potentially. Well, they may not have a
Yeah.
road game, but maybe you're down 2-1 and you're on your home court. You know what I'm saying? Like I haven't seen those type of responses yet. And if they're playing a Golden State, if they're playing a LA, if they're playing almost any team that's going to make the playoffs in the West, it's a good team. And it's a team
Yeah.
that potentially could be hitting their stride. So,
It has been tested
yes,
more than them.
there's no cakewalk. Now, do I trust Shea and Ant? Yes. So I don't think they aren't going to show up, but then it's about the others as well. And
Yeah.
we all know there's just that difference. So I speak more to it kind of just being like we have to see. But I do think that makes it interesting because even to the point of like which stars may come out, I think it's open season for younger stars to make their case and even for older stars to cement it. Like
Yeah.
everybody has an opportunity to do something that would be important for their respective careers probably and just is going to be good for the game, or that's what makes it good for the game in my opinion. So the
Yeah.
fact that it is so wide open or feels so wide open, I guess is a good thing, and it makes it interesting because I can't wait to see where the matchups finally fall, and even in the East, because we don't know, if Embiid is coming back. Because, even though we kind of talked about Indiana in the last episode, I don't think it's so much of a scare thing, but I still think they're going to be a tough out, for 7 games. So I
Yeah.
think that the seeding will be really, really interesting. Although I feel like the East really does only come down to 2 or 3 teams at the end of the day. The West being the bloodbath that it is, who do you all think is the biggest threat to? Well, first of all, before I ask who the biggest threat would be, who do y'all think the West goes through? I know I said it was still Denver for me. Do
Yeah.
y'all agree?
Yeah, I would say it's the reigning champions. It's only right. Yeah, like you said, after the All-Star break, they just became themselves, and that's a scary team. MPJ is coming alive. I love to see it. And I feel like he's in a lot of ways their X factor. Like he's just another one that they can rely on. It's just hard for teams to defend.
Yeah, Denver is extremely well rounded, and they are built for the playoffs. But they're talented enough and young enough to still like have a solid regular season. It's not like they have to rest a lot of their guys and be ready for a playoff run. Like they can play their stars and play their core throughout the season, and then still when they get to the playoffs, they're still built and have the talent, to make a deep playoff run. Who's the biggest threat to them in the West?
Dang. Hell. For saying who matches up best with them,
Who's the biggest threat to them?
it's
Mm.
the Thunder. I
Yeah.
mean, you gotta go with granted, I'm just seeing, who's top. It could be the Wolves, Nuggets, and Thunder are all 1 seeds for the case of this. But I think the Thunder are probably the most well-rounded team out of all of them that at least I've seen them handle pressure late games best out of these teams. Like I said, personally, I've seen too much of the Wolves to say that I trust Cat in a late game situation. I feel like sometimes he gets a bit too emotional and caught up in what calls are being called, and he tries to sell something late game, doesn't get it, and he's out of it because he's worried about that. At least from what I've seen. Clippers, you already know what I'm going to say. Do I trust Zion on the Pelicans? Do I trust what Phoenix has put together? No.
So let's stop right there. Let's stop right there at Phoenix.
Yeah. They're playing well. They're playing well right now. No.
So I don't disagree with OKC, but I feel like Denver has options for Shea. They have
No.
I
don't.
You don't think they do? I think
I think
when I say options, I mean I think Shea's still going to be Shea, but I think they have enough, but they have more bodies than most teams to throw at Shea. You got KCP. Honestly, if they want to, they could throw Gordon on Shea. If
Peyton Watson has been incredible.
I'm just saying they have bodies.
Yeah.
They have bodies to expend to do so. They're not relying on one guy. And the same could go for Chet too. And again, I'm not saying that these players are not getting stopped per se, but I think Denver has the best depth to potentially limit them enough on top of their talent to come out on top. Now, where Phoenix comes into play, I think that Phoenix at full strength, at least, I just think they have too much firepower. They're the one team that I don't think Denver can guard. Like Denver couldn't guard 3 Sheas. They can guard 1 Shea and they can guard a Chet, but they can't guard 3 Sheas. So at full health, could Denver really guard KD, Book, and Beal?
2 things. Does Phoenix guard? And then for OKC, the one thing that could be a blessing and a curse here, it's like they don't really have a big to guard Jokic. And that could, like I said, that could be a curse or it could be a blessing where Jokic is going to have, incredible games on his own, but then the others don't get off. Or he drops like 50, 20, and 20. It's like it could go one of 2 ways.
But the thing with Jokic is it's only going to go one way. Because if nobody's able to stop Jokic from being Jokic, his game is involving the others. So unless you really take Jokic, like if you take the ball out of his hands, really, he's still probably good for 10 assists, even if you don't score that much. So that's what I'm saying. When you don't really have, if you don't have somebody that you at least semi-trust, not to have to double for real. And like you said, OKC doesn't have a big. I see the blessing aspect where
they're defensively very versatile. Like
if you
they're probably the best team defense besides the Timberwolves. Jaden McDaniels, Gobert, and I mean hell man, those like I said, all 3 1 seeds.
Right? And it's like, but Denver offensively is just that good. Like that's how good they are. So it's tough. I think to wrap up the Phoenix point, I think that if it would still require like amazing, almost flawless series from that big 3 in Phoenix for them to still come out of the series. I just think they'd be the biggest threat because I mean it was different last year when Phoenix was real top heavy. I don't think they're as top heavy as they were last year. I think they're a bit more well rounded, not as well rounded as Denver, obviously, but I just think they could probably. I don't think they could make it the most interesting. I still think OKC makes that a really interesting series. But ultimately, unless Shea really does like have another tier to him, I think as great as he will more than likely be, I think it'll end up being just him. Like at the end of the day, and that's what'll stop them against a team like Denver. At least that's kind of the only team in the West I see beating OKC. Not gonna lie. They've been playing that well.
Yeah, I think depending on what level, you know me, you know who I'm gonna stand for.
Without
And
Catman, I don't know, bro.
I'm telling you, Nasri's been balling. They could, like I
Western
said,
Conference Finals. You still Western Conference Finals? Are you think they have enough to get there?
they have a more emotionally stable four. I feel like that's a more important presence. Like,
Then OKC.
no, I'm just saying a more emotionally stable four man in Nas Reed. Like
Oh,
late game playoff situation, he's going to be stoic and he is going to ball. Uh, but yeah, cat. Sorry, this is turning into a sound like a cat hate train, but it's more so just like I don't know. From what I've seen in playoff situations, he has a very quick trigger, and you know, I
I
feel
get
like
the
there's
reservations. What do you think about the idea of that? That if Nas Reed plays really well while Cat is out, and plays well in the playoffs, that Minnesota could look at trading Cat and building a better team around Ant, or potentially a more well-rounded team around Ant.
see, that's juicy because when Cat's on, he's on, right? Like
60
we've seen 60 exactly. That's my
twice.
twice. So mm, that's juicy because I feel like I want to hang on to Cat. I feel like there's more to Cat, and it's all in that off-season development. I feel like he needs a little more toughness to him. Um, I just don't think I would entertain the idea of trading him yet. I wouldn't because this is the true first season that they've been able to enjoy success to this magnitude, and it just feels like it would be too early to blow that up.
I,
So I hear you. I don't think they have to trade Cat. I'm not even necessarily saying I'm a fan of it. I would just get it. But to your point about what Cat needs to get to the next level, my original question was going to be, is that next level even in Minnesota? Because at some point in time, Ant will, if he hasn't already, at some point in time, Ant will undoubtedly like take the mantle of that team if it's not
Mm,
really already his. And to that point, if Cat is not going to match the demeanor and the attitude and the approach that Ant is already displaying, there's going to come a point in time where he gonna have to go anyway.
yes,
So, so
yeah,
I wonder if Cat. I do think that if they were to make a move this off season, that this would be the off season and the season to see if Cat turns that corner. But if he does,
exactly.
yeah. But if he doesn't, I do think that clock will start to tick, and Cat will definitely be the odd man out, unless for whatever odd reason there's still some high ass package for Gobert, and they end up flipping him instead. But
there's
I
no
don't
way.
see that happening.
No,
So
Yeah, no, I think in order to survive on a team that's led by Ant gives me Jimmy Butler vibes, right? Like you have to perform. He's not going to accept anything less than the best version of you. So if he does start to take ownership of the Wolves and start to lead that team, I don't think Cat today will be able to survive in Minnesota, much to your point. But I do feel like entertaining the idea of a Cat trade this offseason is too early.
I
fair.
respect that. I definitely respect that. Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna get real
Mm-hmm.
interesting over there in Minnesota. Soon enough,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna get very interesting.
Yeah,
Um, to the next thing on the docket, somewhat dealing with some of the teams that we mentioned, but the legendary Phil Jackson has a theory. I think he calls it the 40-20 rule. If a team reaches 40 wins before they get 20 losses, they are considered an elite team. And I don't know the exact research, I don't remember it, but a good amount of champions in the past 20 years have fell into that category. Do you all feel like that theory is? I mean, I guess we could go up the past 20 years and say there's obviously proof in the pudding that the theory works, but I kind of feel like we're in a little bit of a new NBA where that's not always the case. I think it's way more about just how you look come playoff time, and we've seen stranger things happen. So, what are y'all thoughts on the 40-20 theory or rule?
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be the case. But if we're being technical, his argument is if you follow that 40-20 rule, you should be considered elite. And I kind of agree with that, just in terms of like win percentage. And obviously, your team has been playing some good basketball throughout basically the entirety of the season, right? Like will we have considered last year's Miami team, although they went on that great run, will we have considered them an elite team? Like probably not, especially due to seeding, record, whatever the case may be. So I mean, I kind of the rule is. I'm not gonna say it's a stupid rule. It's a decent rule in terms of what he said the rule is for.
Yeah, I think what your feelings that the rule is just kind of self-explanatory. It's like, yeah, good teams are probably gonna win the championship. Team that's like 30-30, you know, probably not, you know. It's I don't know, it's kind of obvious, I feel. Like good rule of thumb, like you should probably win in 2-1 games at a time. But, you know, I think it's more about like who's hot at the right time with a good record. Like it could have been any of those teams any year that went 40-20, you know? Like then you're picking out of the best teams. Like of course those are going to be the elite teams. Yeah. So I would agree with him, but I would just feel like it's kind of like a duh answer. It's like there's
Yeah.
not an elite 20 and 40 team. Like the Spurs aren't elite at 14 and 52. They have elite players maybe. Like but yeah.
So I agree. I think in general it's a great rule of thumb. I think it does beg the question for me though. Uh, is Sacramento an elite team?
Nope, they're 37-27. Sorry.
No, but do you consider them like based off of your eye test? Are they an elite team?
They're a good team, but like
So
elite, no.
so that's really more so my question. What's the separation? Like, yes, within the like we can consider 40-20, but based off of how a team looks, what's the
Hmm.
separation from elite to good?
So I think the separation would be the seasons that the Thunder is having or that the Wolves are having, the season that the 76ers were having prior to Embiid's injury. Like that's some good stuff. You know what I mean? The stuff that Boston has been able to do where out of the gate, I mean, they've been at one or the two seed the entire season. That's elite. Like teams where basically every night they're favorited. That's elite. When you have to question how deep can this team go in the playoffs? What are we going to see from this team tonight? Like the Kings are playing the Lakers tonight. I don't know if that's a definite W. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Especially if LeBron's healthy and AD is playing the way he played against Minnesota, albeit Minnesota was injured. But I'm not sure if that's a definite W against the Kings or against the Lakers. But if the Lakers were going into OKC tonight, I'll be like, okay, that's probably the Thunder's win. You know what I mean? So I think that's what separates it. Just having that confidence in the team to be able to perform and not questioning what they'll do on a nightly basis.
So I think one of y'all mentioned it, but elite talent doesn't necessarily equate to being an elite team. Is
No.
Yeah.
essentially okay. I
And
agree.
what I'm going to touch on too, I also think I'm gonna go back and correct my statement. I think he's wrong. I think he's wrong in saying this, and here's why. I don't think that you can consider a team elite outside of inside of one season. I think that a team can be considered elite after what they have done over bodies of seasons. Whereas like a Spurs team over countless years getting 50 wins is an elite team. Like just because you have a good year, that could be an outlier year. The Kings had an elite season last year, and now they're having a good season. Where it's like we need to like there's elite regular season teams. The Bucks were that for however long Budenholzer, but as a postseason team, we were mid. So it's like there's regular season and postseason that can be taken into account, and I think that's why you have to look at the entire year body of work to see like, oh, that's an elite team or this isn't, you know?
But those teams change over the course of seasons.
Yes, I was going to say that. I think that to what you described, I don't
I
necessarily.
think that's more so like a dynasty.
Yes, exactly. When you start talking about multiple seasons, that's a dynasty, elite dynasty for sure. But I think if you have to put it into the context of a season, at least like that's why I think the 40-20, like you said, is a rule of thumb for what he was referring to, because it is within that season, which is why, like you said, you can have an elite season, but you could have a good season. Now you might have any, but I guess why it still gets tricky is because I think there are elite teams that, for one reason or another, don't perform that way to where it looks like that during the regular season. But they're still an elite team because when all the pieces are there and when they are able to get everything on one accord, they are elite. I just think a lot of elite teams don't reach their full potential.
Were the Atlanta Hawks elite?
The year they played, the year they got to the conference finals?
Were the Utah Jazz elite?
With Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert?
Yeah, were the Los Angeles Clippers elite? And I say this having love for all of those teams in the past that were great teams. They were, considered elite, but like in the context of history, are they still elite teams? Like even for the season, I guess I see the point because it's like then great teams get lost in history just because they haven't won rings. But what
all
is
the time?
Yeah, what is elite then? Like are we that's what gets lost in the sauce for me, where it's just like, are those elite teams just because they had great seasons? But like, were the Spurs an elite team because they had great seasons and capped it off with proving that they can win chips too?
Yeah, I guess we gotta define elite like in general. Like,
well, I think
yeah. Go ahead.
I think if in that season you were successful, yeah, you're elite that season. You know what I mean? Like that Jazz team was the number 1 seed.
For like 3 years too. Yeah, in Toronto too.
Yeah, like, and they continuously got to the conference finals. They just got bounced by LeBron, another elite. Well, now that's tricky because we're the Cavs elite, or was
right?
But that's LeBron. But that's
it's
LeBron.
Crazy. It's crazy.
That's a tough. I didn't think it would be. I didn't realize how layered it could get and how tough it can get. But you do have to get really specific because does elite have a time like frame on it? Can elite only be looked at in a certain span of time, or can you define it generally? I don't really know. I think the more you take it out of context, or the more you widen the context.
I think regular season, because that's what the 40-20 rule is anyway. So maybe you limit the elite title to a regular season team, because when it comes to the playoffs, everything changes anyway. Like, would you say that Boston team last year was elite, even though they lost to an 8 seed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, great question to wrap up. What makes an elite playoff team? The playoffs are already different. So what's the separator in the playoffs? Like, what makes you elite? I think execution is huge. I really honestly probably execution is what makes you elite on playoff time in all facets. All things considered, if you can execute both ends of the ball, you're an elite team in the playoffs. Because we see so many teams fail to do that, even if they did it all regular season. So I mean, I don't know if y'all had another option or answer or not, but that was just my
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, we'll transition to a elite point guard, I would say, and some comments that he had that may or may not be considered elite, depending on how you feel.
Oh.
Yeah. No, but Isaiah Thomas was recently on the Draymond Green show. And they were talking shop, as hoopers typically do. And Zeke had a lot of interesting comments. I found them interesting. I don't think they're the worst thing ever said, but I do think they're discourse worthy for sure. There's no need to address him and Mike. Zeke, nobody cares. It's
No.
just let it go. Honestly, truly, Mike ain't apologizing anyway, so I don't even hold your breath waiting on that.
Yeah.
But one of the comments specifically about the Warriors that he made was essentially in so many words that KD saved the legacies of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Of course, famously, they went 73-9 and then lost to the Cavs as they came back down from down 3-1. And then KD joined the next year and they won 2 in a row and probably would have won 3 in a row, arguably, if KD doesn't get injured or did Klay get injured that year. Or did both of them get injured that year?
They both did, didn't they?
Right. Yeah.
Clay got injured in Golden State. KD got injured at Toronto.
Yep.
Makes sense. Do y'all agree with Zeke on that? Do y'all agree that KD saved the legacy of those three?
I do not. Steph Curry would have broken the shooting record with or without KD. Steph Curry would have gotten a ring in Boston with or without KD, obviously. I mean against Boston, not in Boston. Y'all know what I mean though.
Mm.
Um, and all three of those players were playing together when rings were won after KD. We were talking about the Warriors being a dynasty before KD joined. So I think Zeke is giving KD too much credit. I think the question should be, did the Warriors save the legacy of KD? That's better.
That's an easier question to answer for sure.
Yeah.
That's an absolute yes. Gail, go ahead.
In honor of National Women's History Month, I'll say nothing. That was it. That was all that needed to be said. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. They saved KD's legacy. KD didn't save theirs. They were a dynasty. And they were a 73-win team. They would have lost and they still probably would have bounced back and won it. That's why I don't know why they had to call. The West would have been more fun if KD just would have stayed in OKC. But here we are now. Everyone's joining everyone.
Yeah, blame Brian. I I disagree with Zeke as well. I think that I get his point of how KD kind of gave them a cushion, if you will, because it would have been a harder trip back to the finals, especially if KD doesn't come there and goes somewhere else in the West or stays. We potentially were seeing a rematch of OKC and Golden State, maybe. Who knows, right? But I think I get his point of KD kind of giving them a cushion to extend a window that may not have been looked at as guaranteed after 2016. But to the points you made, Ashley, I don't think Steph's legacy was already kind of really being cemented. And I know that the rings matter for Steph's top 10 conversation, but outside of that, Steph didn't need much more to be cemented as a top PG, to be cemented as the best shooter ever. So Steph's legacy was already going to be pretty cemented. I think the rings help Draymond and Klay to a degree, but at the end of the day, their role on that team, they were already recognized for that. They were already acknowledged for their roles on that team. I don't think KD coming in, ensuring 2 more rings changes the bottom line of it. The rings make things sound better. You know what I'm saying? But also, I don't think those rings put them into particularly different conversations than what they would be in anyway. I think they would probably be Hall of Famers with just the 2 more than, Probably, maybe not guaranteed first ballot, but they should get there. You know what I'm saying? So I disagree in that regard. I do agree that it's too much credit to KD, and I think I get the basis of what he's trying to say, but I think saying it that way with the fact that I think it is more important that KD's legacy was saved by coming, I think it's weird to take that angle. Which tracks though, because his other statement wasn't really much better. His other statement was that Steph essentially shouldn't be considered to be a top point guard, or isn't considered a top point guard to him, because, and he feels like Draymond was the point guard of the Warriors because he averaged more assists. And that because of how Steph's game is, and he comes off a lot of screens and he shoots, that he's not really considered a point guard in Isaiah Thomas's mind. I think I know where this is going, but thoughts on that particular quote from Zeke?
Miguel, you look interesting. Go ahead.
It's interesting because I think I've talked about this before, where it's like he's not lying. Where it's like he plays point for his team. Where it's like LeBron could. Why isn't LeBron Magic?
Mm.
What
Gilbert
makes
Arenas
him
made
not?
that point. Gilbert Arenas made that point. He said, if that's the logic we're going by, then LeBron's the greatest point guard ever.
Like, let's be real. Like he is the point guard of all point guards. It's just that he's 6'7", 6'8". So it's like, I don't know. I see his point, but Steph still handles and Steph still runs PG for them. It's just that they use Draymond as that so he could be a more effective on-ball screener, you know. And
Yeah.
he can dribble and he can make a pretty nice backdoor bounce pass to people. It's like, you know, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily like he points, you know, like he will set people up, like, you know, but he's more of a point forward than anybody. Like if we're using the term point forward, I feel like Draymond is the essential, like he is what you would look at. But like point guard, I would still see Bron as that more. Like, and I still wouldn't even see Draymond as the point guard of their team primarily. It's still gonna be Steph.
Yeah, I agree. Steph is still a point guard, although he does play the point guard position different than a lot of guards out there. The offense is still facilitated through him. He's just a great off-ball point guard. Like he's slippery. He slips through screens. He gets open. However, he's still facilitating that. Like Draymond will bring the ball up the court sometimes, but so would Steph. And in the lineup, he's listed as the point guard. Like he's a point guard.
I think I agree. I think if Steph was put on a team where he was best suited as a facilitator, I think we'd see that. The reason we won't see that is because he's the greatest shooter ever. So it would be
Yes.
dumb as hell from a basketball standpoint not to maximize having the greatest shooter ever on the floor. But I think we've also seen Steph facilitate. No,
Yes.
Steph doesn't have to give you 10 assists a night, because don't nobody want to chase Steph around the 3-point line. So
Exactly.
and Steph can give you 30. And I think the knock would be if we had seen Steph fail in that role before. We've never seen Steph fail as a facilitator. He just doesn't have to. So I think that trying to knock him for being a shooter, for being a shoot first, or like a shooting point guard. But actually, I love what you said. He's just great off the ball as a point guard. We're so used to, even if you're looking at your prototypical point guards like your Nashes or your Rondos, right? Like Nash was a great point guard, but yeah, Nash needed to have the ball, and for that Phoenix offense, it just made sense for him to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Steph couldn't do what Steve Nash did. He probably could do it at a higher level if you really just told Steph to play like Steve Nash, but he's Steph Curry. So he has a completely different like arsenal of weapons. So I get the argument from the standpoint, I guess, of maybe how he more than likely looks at. I mean, because Isaiah himself was a scoring point guard. So it's not like he was your prototypical facilitator. You know what I'm saying? But I just think he got all in all. I just think IT got a lot of hate. He got a lot of bitterness in him. Why? I don't know what Steph did to him. Mike, I get, but I don't know what Steph did to him for Steph to get this type of hate. I don't really understand it, but
Who knows?
but such is life, I guess. But we will wrap up the episode with a guess the player. We haven't done a guess the player in a minute.
I'm ready.
I got the last one right.
You did. I think y'all are 1-1. Yeah.
I won't give myself that credit. It was Cal. Cal's
Well,
one.
fair. Well,
name the secret person. Never mind. Go on.
okay.
The special guest.
So inside scoring is a 79. Outside scoring is an 88. Athleticism is a 75. Playmaking is a 76. Rebounding is a 50. Defending is a 60. And their overall is an 87.
This is a starter. An 87?
Yes. Yeah.
Defending is 60?
Yeah. Very
Was
misleading.
anything an 80 for their... Nothing sound like it? I didn't catch it.
Kyrie?
The only thing that was 80, the only thing that was a 80 was outside scoring is an 88.
I feel like
That's
Kyrie's
probably-
inside scoring
Would be way higher, yeah.
Outside scoring is an 88. This is a shooter. It's someone that can probably just shoot. Or is this a mid-range scorer?
It's a mid-range scorer.
That's juicy.
He is more than likely of higher caliber than y'all are originally thinking.
The overalls are crazy then. Okay, so I mean not overall, but the
Yeah, they are.
His
Very
defense is
misleading.
60.
I wouldn't think it's that low, but it's also not that high. He's not known as a defender. He could be a great defender, though.
I'd
Andrew Wiggins?
conference.
It's not Wiggins, but think better. Think higher ceiling. Way better, way higher ceiling, really. But
Devin Booker?
not Book, but you're getting warmer.
Okay. No, it better not be Jamal Murray.
It's not Jamal Murray.
Okay.
They would not be considered a guard.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In the West?
Yes.
In the Pelicans?
Yes.
Beyond,
Yes.
but he finishes inside.
He does. That was very misleading. As I was going through, I was very shocked on the like defensive and rebounding side. Those numbers were way lower than I would think for him.
60 for Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, the inside scoring was a 78 for crying out loud.
That's the creators were like, they're in New Orleans. They're not watching that.
What killed me was they said athleticism was a 75.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's what would have threw me.
At least an 83.
He's at least an 80 athleticism for sure.
Like,
For
what?
sure.
That's weird. That's bad.
Yeah. 2K is weird. Okay.
Look at me. Look at that.
If I had said the archetype is a shot creating 3-level threat, would y'all have guessed him quicker?
No.
Maybe. Who's to say?
I would have probably guessed Josh Giddey.
88 outside shooting? Oh, with that title.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I did see him put up a pump fake for a layup the other night. Shot creating.
I mean, he is a shot creator.
So
I thought mid range might have gave it away a little bit when I say he was more of a mid range player.
I thought Zach Levine.
But when you said Booker, I was like, that's probably the closest in like talent level. But Wiggins was a good like base. That's why I was like a better higher ceiling Wiggins, but same archetype in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
That ain't bad. Look at us getting better.
absolutely.
Raise the roof.
Crying. But another great episode of the Right Quality Podcast. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, man. We're in March. I am excited.
Ooh.
Start talking college hoops. And honestly, we're gonna be talking about the women's tournament. I don't
Yeah.
really care about the men's
Ooh.
tournament right now.
We
I'm
were
not gonna hold
just
you.
that was just in the group chat. Yep.
Look, listen.
Storylines are better.
I'm all in on this women's tournament. I ain't gonna hold you. I ain't
Give
gonna
me
lie.
SCLSU one more game.
Yeah.
Let me see it again. Let me see
Yes.
coaches fight.
Dawn ain't gonna fight, man.
Never, yeah.
Dawn ain't
Put the
fighting,
Dukes up.
man.
You talking all that mess.
Dawn
Put
got too
up,
much
coach.
class, man. She ain't doing that.
No, she's talking about go for the bigger target. Come on, coach. We're squaring up. Meet me at half court. Layup lines.
But I'm excited, man. We're gonna talk and review Selection Sunday. We're going to do our brackets, I think we said, and we're gonna let y'all know how we feeling about our brackets. But yeah, some other NCAA topics that we might talk a little bit NIL as well. But yeah, we're gonna shift focus to college for a little bit, and then yeah, right after that, it's gonna be playoff time. So it's lit regardless. Ooh, y'all, we gotta get in a free agency episode for NFL though. Crazy.
Hey, man.
My heart is in shambles.
Rest in peace, my man, Aaron Jones.
Not rest in peace. Jesus.
Rest in peace.
That's great. That's chef's kiss.
I can't be that upset. I can't be that upset.
We may not be
done. So I don't know.
Rest in peace, Simone Biles.
Yeah.
Goodbye, whatever his name is, Candace Owens.
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Gail,
he had a good flag for us. He had a good flag for us. I remember his contributions.
Gail, you wild, bro.
He will be missed. Hey, shouts out Candace Owens' brother. We miss you.
Xavier McKinney turning that into him.
That's the one. That's the move right there. That's the beautiful one.
Hey, look.
Bring me Blake Corum in the 3rd round, and I will be happy. Give me Blake Corum in the 3rd round and a wide receiver somewhere along the way, and I can die happy in an offensive line and a defensive line. God bless.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got to give him the NFL free agency episode for sure, or at least a segment. We got to get into that for the audience.
Got to.
Until next time, we'll catch y'all on the next episode. Peace.